In the summer of 1942, the war in North Africa was slipping through British fingers. Rommel, the Desert Fox, had humiliated them at Tobruk, driven them back across Libya, and was now standing at the gates of Egypt. If he broke through, the Suez Canal was gone. The entire Middle East would fall into German hands. Britain was running out of time, running out of options, and running out of generals who could stop him. Then came Alamein. But this is not just the story of a battle. It is the story of the greatest military deception ever executed in the desert. A phantom army built from plywood and canvas, fake pipelines laid in the wrong direction, and a plan so bold that even Winston Churchill thought it might be madness. Erwin Rommel was not an ordinary general. He had earned his legend in France, in Greece, and across the burning sands of North Africa. His Afrika Korps moved faster than anyone thought possible. He didn't follow orders. He rewrote them on the battlefield. The British called him a genius. Their own soldiers, exhausted and retreating, whispered his name with something close to fear. By the time he reached El Alamein in the summer of 1942, he had pushed the British 8th Army over 1,000 kilometers in just a few months. But Rommel had a problem he never fully admitted. His supply lines were stretched to breaking point. His tanks were running on captured British fuel. His men were exhausted. El Alamein was not just a British defensive line. It was a natural choke point between the Mediterranean Sea to the north and the impassable Qattara Depression to the south. There was no way around it. For the first time in the entire Desert War, Rommel could not outflank his enemy. He had to go straight through. And that is exactly where the British were waiting. General Bernard Montgomery took command of the 8th Army in August 1942. He was arrogant, obsessive, and completely different from every general who had come before him. Where others improvised, Montgomery planned. Where others reacted, he prepared. He looked at the ground, looked at his men, and made one decision that would change everything. He refused to attack until he was absolutely ready. Churchill pushed him. London pushed him. The entire British war effort was screaming for action. Montgomery didn't move. He spent weeks rebuilding morale, training his troops, studying Rommel's tactics, and preparing something that had never been tried at this scale in the desert. A deception so vast and so detailed that it would make Rommel look in completely the wrong direction at the worst possible moment. Operation Bertram was its name, and it was a masterpiece. The British had a problem. They were going to attack from the north, from the coast, where the ground was firmer and the advance was possible. But Rommel expected them to attack from the south. Montgomery needed Rommel to keep expecting that. For weeks, while the real attack was assembled right under his nose. So they built a fake army in the south. Thousands of dummy tanks, nothing more than wooden frames draped with canvas and metal sheeting, appeared in the southern sector. British engineers worked at night, meticulously crafting formations of vehicles that looked, from the air, like armored divisions preparing to strike. Fake supply dumps were stacked with empty boxes. Fake gun positions were dug and filled with painted logs. A fake water pipeline was laid across the desert, deliberately built too slowly, at a pace that suggested it wouldn't be ready until November. Rommel's analysts looked at the construction schedule and calculated the British couldn't possibly attack before November. They were wrong by 3 weeks. In the north, where the real attack was being prepared, the British did something equally extraordinary. They hid everything. Real tanks were covered with frames that made them look like supply trucks. Real artillery was buried under camouflage netting, undetectable from German reconnaissance aircraft. Over 1,000 guns, hundreds of tanks, and tens of thousands of men were moved into position in total secrecy. The Germans flew over daily. They saw supply trucks. They saw nothing threatening. They had no idea that the most powerful British force ever assembled in North Africa was crouched beneath the sand, waiting. On the night of October 23, 1942, at exactly 21:40, 1,000 guns opened fire simultaneously along a 40-kilometer front. The ground shook. The sky turned white. German and Italian positions that had been carefully mapped and targeted were hit with a barrage so intense that veterans who survived it could not describe it without falling silent. It lasted 5.5 hours. And then the infantry went forward into the minefields, what Montgomery called the Devil's Garden. 2 million mines laid in belts 5 miles deep, covered by machine guns, artillery, and wire. What followed was not a quick victory. Rommel was not broken in a day. He rushed back from Germany, where he had been on medical leave, and threw everything he had at the British advance. Panzer counterattacks hammered the Allied positions. The fighting was savage, grinding, brutal. Casualties on both sides mounted by the hour. Montgomery absorbed the blows, held his nerve, and refused to be drawn off his plan. The decisive moment came in the first days of November. Montgomery shifted his attack, found a weak point in the German line, and punched through it with his armor. Operation Supercharge, the breakout, tore a hole in Rommel's front that could not be repaired. The Afrika Korps, low on fuel, low on ammunition, its tanks burning in the desert, began to retreat. Hitler ordered Rommel to stand fast. Victory or death. Rommel looked at his situation and made the only rational choice. He disobeyed. He pulled what was left of his army back west, saving tens of thousands of men from certain capture or death. But the battle was over. El Alamein was lost. The retreat from El Alamein lasted almost 3,000 kilometers. It ended in Tunisia 6 months later, with the complete destruction of Axis forces in North Africa. 250,000 German and Italian soldiers surrendered. The Afrika Korps, Rommel's pride, the force that had made the entire British Empire bleed for 2 years, ceased to exist. Churchill, who had waited so long for a victory, told the British people something they needed to hear. This was not the end, he said. It was not even the beginning of the end. But it was, perhaps, the end of the beginning. Montgomery's deception had worked perfectly. Rommel had looked south while the storm gathered in the north. A ghost army of canvas and wood had bought the time needed to assemble the real one. And in the end, the Desert Fox, for all his genius, for all his speed and daring, had been outsmarted not just on the battlefield, but before the first shot was ever fired. El Alamein did not win the war, but it proved, for the first time, that the war could be won. And in 1942, that was everything. That was the story of El Alamein, the battle where deception won before the first shot was fired, and where the Desert Fox met the one enemy he never saw coming. If you want more stories like this, forgotten battles, brilliant strategies, and the real footage history almost lost, make sure you subscribe to War Origins. Every week, we go deeper into the moments that shape the world. See you next time.